welcome back to the deep dive. You know how this works. We take complex sources, we take your research, and we distill it all into something you can actually use. And today, we are diving into a really pivotal life decision, the gap year. Whether you've just finished high school, maybe what you'd call metric, or you're a professional thinking about a sabbatical, that choice to just hit pause for a year it's massive.
It is. It promises so much growth, but it comes with some very real risks.
So our mission today is to go through the source material you sent and give you the blueprint, a clear breakdown of the pros, the cons, and the absolute essential planning steps to make it all worthwhile.
Exactly. And at its core, a gap year is just a planned, deliberate 12-month break from whatever your structured path is.
And not just drifting.
No, not at all. It's about stepping away to get some clarity and, more importantly, to get new experiences. The activities, as your sources point out, are all over the map.
Right.
Some people travel, some volunteer, others get, serious work experience abroad. But the common thread is that it's a conscious choice to step outside of your comfort zone. It's about accelerating your learning in a way that, frankly, school can't.
Okay, so let's stop calling it a break. Let's reframe it as a development opportunity. The sources really position this as a fast track to skills and direction.
Yeah.
Let's unpack the huge advantages first. I want to start with personal growth, specifically self-reliance.
The big one.
It is. When you're far from home, there is no safety net. You are suddenly the CEO of your own life for a year.
Right.
And that means you're responsible for everything. I mean, managing a budget across 3 different currencies or trying to rebook a missed train in a language you barely speak.
Things that inevitably go wrong.
They always go wrong. And it sounds stressful, but that kind of constant low-level problem solving, that's what forges real self-reliance.
It absolutely is. And that daily problem solving is what drives tangible skill development. What's so interesting is that these aren't just, soft skills you read about in a textbook. These are skills you get under pressure. Your sources mention budgeting mastery, for instance. It's not just about saving a few bucks.
It's more than that.
It's about reducing what they call decision fatigue later in life. If you can handle a backpacking budget across Southeast Asia, you can probably handle any personal budget because you've learned real-world risk management.
Okay, and this is where it gets really interesting for me. The idea of clarity and direction. We live in a world that pushes students straight from high school into university. And you might spend 2-3 years studying something you find out you absolutely hate.
Because you never had a second to just breathe and think.
Exactly.
Right.
That time away removes the external pressure. It gives you the space to actually ask, what do I want? Without the noise of, what your parents expect or what your friends are doing.
That reflection is invaluable. It can prevent that really expensive pivot 2 or 3 years into a degree you don't even want.
And that feeds into cultural exposure and networking, which kind of go hand in hand, don't they?
They absolutely do. The moment you immerse yourself in a new culture, your whole perspective just broadens instantly.
Right.
And that makes you more adaptable. It prepares you for today's workplaces where diversity isn't just a buzzword, it's a daily reality.
And the networking piece is the long game.
That's the long game payoff, exactly. When you volunteer somewhere or work in a different industry, you meet people you would literally never cross paths with at home. The sources call this building your social capital. It's the connections that lead to mentorship, to collaborations, and, sometimes to career doors opening years down the line that you never expected.
So it's an investment, not just a line on your resume.
It's a huge investment in your future.
Okay, that potential for growth is genuinely huge. But that kind of freedom has a steep price tag.
It does.
We have to pivot now and look at the cold, hard reality of the costs. Because the sources are very clear. This isn't the right choice for everyone.
And that raises the important question. What are the concrete financial and academic risks? You can't just gloss over this stuff. For a lot of people, the money part is a non-starter.
Yeah.
So let's start there. The financial considerations. A gap year is expensive. And it's not just the big things like flights and a place to stay.
It's just the daily grind.
It's the daily costs, food, visas, insurance, an emergency fund. But more than that, unless you're working, there's a fundamental lack of income.
Right. You're not earning.
You're not earning. And that directly impacts your ability for university or a car or, life. It's a full year of drawing down your savings, not building them up.
And that financial cost, I think, ties directly to the risk of academic and social disruption.
How so?
Well, if you put off university for a year, you miss starting with your friends from high school. And that can lead to this real feeling of being left behind socially.
FOMO is real.
It's very real. They're hitting milestones together, and you're trying to figure out if you booked the right hostel.
And then there's the academic side, what the sources call curriculum decay. That's a real thing.
So your skills get rusty.
Very rusty. If you spend a year working on a farm, but you plan to study, say, computer engineering, those complex math skills you learned are not going to be sharp.
Right.
It takes a genuine concerted effort to ramp your brain back up to that academic intensity after a year off.
And what about the mental side of things? The sources mention a potential for a serious loss of motivation when you try to get back to a structured life.
Yeah.
Is it really that hard to restart the engine?
It's often called re-entry shock. And yes, it can be incredibly difficult. After a year where you set your own schedule, coming back to a 9-to-5 or a full course load can feel, well, almost impossible.
Especially if you didn't have a plan.
That's the key. If the year lacked structure, even a loose one, it is so easy to lose sight of those long-term goals. You get caught up in the freedom of it all.
That makes total sense.
Yeah.
And there's also the pressure, isn't there? The pressure to make the year meaningful. You see it all over social media. The perfect highlight reels of these amazing trips.
The curated experience.
Exactly. And you feel this pressure to make every single moment worth the cost and the effort. You start worrying, did I pick the right place? Am I learning enough? Will a future employer see this as a resume gap?
So the freedom becomes an obligation.
It becomes an obligation.
Yeah.
And that external and internal judgment can turn what should be a time of discovery into a real source of anxiety.
It's a lot to carry. But, okay, let's say we decide the benefits do outweigh those risks.
Right.
Then the next part is absolutely critical, planning. You have to turn the idea into a successful reality.
So what does this all mean if you're thinking about taking this leap? It sounds like planning is everything. It's the line between a life-changing year and a very expensive year of just wandering.
It really is. You have to plan ahead. But planning here doesn't mean scheduling every single hour of your day. It means setting clear goals. A well-planned gap year stops you from wasting time and money. So you have to ask yourself, what are the, say, 3 non-negotiable things I have to achieve this year?
Like I need to learn Spanish or
I need to get experience in digital marketing. Or even, I just want to hike an entire continent. Whatever it is, answering that gives you the framework for everything else. Your budget, your destination, it all flows from those goals.
And right after that, you have to budget wisely. We said how expensive it can be, so this part is non-negotiable. It's not enough to just have a pile of cash.
No.
You have to budget for the experience. You need to calculate everything. Travel, food, accommodation, activities, and compare that to what you can realistically save or earn.
Right.
And what the sources recommend is a tiered budget, essentials first. Then a healthy amount for experiential spending, and then, and this is crucial, separate emergency fund.
For when things go wrong.
For when the passport gets lost or you need a last-minute flight.
And we keep saying that a break doesn't mean falling behind mentally. You have to stay engaged academically, even if it's not formal school.
Keep the mind sharp.
Exactly. Find low-stakes ways to maintain those learning habits. This could be taking a few targeted online courses, or even just reading nonfiction that lines up with what you want to study later.
Or listening to podcasts.
Or listening to a really good deep dive podcast. The point is to show your future self and future employers that you are being intentional with your time.
Okay, let's dig a little deeper into the money, because that's what stops most people before they even start. If the costs are that big, what are the most creative ways the sources suggest for funding this thing?
What's fascinating is just how many options there are beyond just savings. First, yes, the sources say be aggressive with saving beforehand. Cut the coffees, the subscriptions, all of it for a solid year. You'd be surprised how much you can put away.
Wait, let me just jump in there. That's good advice, but for a recent grad, there isn't always a lot of disposable income to cut from. What about earning during the year?
Excellent point. So beyond savings, you look at part-time work you can do anywhere. Waitressing, tutoring, or remote freelance work like writing or design is huge. You can do it before you leave to build a fund or while you're traveling to top it up.
Right.
And don't forget, Grants and scholarships, they exist. They're often tied to specific volunteer programs or cultural exchanges.
Okay.
And yes, the sources even mention crowdfunding, like GoFundMe, especially if your project has a really compelling story, like you're going to do environmental research or build homes.
And what about programs that bundle costs?
Yes, finally, look for budget-friendly programs that include your accommodation or food that can drastically cut down your day-to-day spending.
That makes sense. And speaking of structured programs, the source material really puts a spotlight on volunteering abroad. Seems to be the perfect mix of personal growth and, contributing to something bigger.
It really is.
But it requires serious prep. You can't just show up. You have to identify what you're actually interested in first. Then research reputable organizations, check their requirements, apply way in advance, and critically, get all your visas and documents sorted.
It's a logistical puzzle.
It is, but the payoff seems to be massive. And regardless of what you do, volunteer, work, travel, the practical skills you gain are universal.
Right. They are absolutely universal. The sources consistently show that you will come back with better time management. You'll probably know at least some of another language, and your confidence and problem-solving skills will be through the roof.
Why is that?
Because when the bus breaks down in the middle of nowhere, or you have to negotiate a rental agreement in broken Spanish, you are forced to find a solution right then and there. That's accelerated real-time learning, and that's a skill set that plays well in every future job interview.
So that brings us to the end of our deep dive. We've really covered the core tension here, haven't we? The incredible promise of self-reliance and clarity versus the very real risks of financial strain, academic disruption, and maybe losing your motivation.
We have. And for those of you listening who've weighed all this and decided, you know what, a gap year isn't for me, remember what your source materials say. You don't have to stop learning. You can jump straight into further education or short courses in really practical fields like accounting or business or supply chain management. Skipping the break just means you're choosing immediate momentum over that planned reflection.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And to leave you with one last thing to think about as you make this call, the sources suggest a gap year gives you a rare chance to do things you probably won't have the time or flexibility for later in life.
Life gets complicated.
It gets so much more complicated and structured. So if you choose not to take the gap year, what specific non-academic experiences, that deep cultural immersion, that unexpected project might you be trading for that immediate return to structure? And more importantly, how can you make sure you build those powerful perspective-shifting moments into your busy future life? Thanks for diving deep with us.